experiment is very related to observation, because when you are experimenting with something, you have to observe it, that's for sure. But then how is the experiment different? Well, it's different because in case of observation, you just observe, don't change anything. But in case of experiment, you observe something and then you change something in the environment. And then you would like to observe the change, what happened. You would like to observe the effect of that change that you have made, that you have consciously made in the environment. The investigator here manipulates and controls one or more independent variables in the environment and observes the dependent variables for variation. Let's say I would like to observe now, let's say we have the COVID-19 here. I think it would be a huge research topic for the future, not just in medicine but in also other aspects as well, because I'm sure you know the economic consequences are already happening at a huge scale. So let's say that we had our previous lives before COVID-19, but COVID-19 happened, and now I would like to look at the effect, how COVID-19 affects people's purchasing habits. And now I will be able to check it, and I will be able to see what the differences are. So in this case, the aim for the experiment is to predict the future behavior of the observants and find a correlation between the cases and results. And in this case, experiments are usually in a controlled environment, so you will be able to check and see the changes that have happened. Usually it can happen in a laboratory environment, that is something that you artificially created, or it can also be in a field experiment when it's in a realistic situation. If you think about experiments regarding brands, I'm sure you have met this before, but on Cara Street or on Dugonich Square, they usually do this with the Coca-Cola. And in case of Coca-Cola, you can taste the Coke, and you have two different cups of Cokes, but you don't know what's the difference between them. But one of them is zero or without sugar, I think it's light or zero, I don't know. So you have one which is without sugar and the one that's original. And you have to drink both and decide which one is which. But in this case, this is also an experiment, because they are experimenting if you know the difference between them. Okay, so in this case, you can have different experiments. Well, in terms of laboratory experiment, there is the Stanford marshmallow experiment on the next slide, slide number 4. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but if you will have time, just look at this experiment. It's very adorable. If you would like to differentiate between the observation and experiment, what you have to remember very clearly, and I think this is also part of your board exam questions, is observation is something that you just observe. You don't change any variables in the equation, you just look at it. But in terms of experiment, you look at it, yes, you observe, but what makes it an experiment is that you actually change something. You change a variable, and you would like to look at the effect of that change of variables or variable. So this is what you have to remember, that experiments are usually in a controlled environment, and there is a variable, at least one, which has been changed or which will be changed. Okay, and we have lots of tests actually with which we can test, or with which we can experiment. So let's say we have a company and we would like to have new products, or we have already existing products. Well, depending on where we are in terms of product development, we can use these experiments to get some information from our future users. So let's say if I have that concept already, I have a new product which is not on the market yet, but I would like to research, then I can give this product to the future users or the potential target market, and they can give me some feedback. And these are called product tests, where they have an initial idea what it is like. They can give us some initial feedback of what they think, and this is called the first impression test. We can also have an experience test, where they don't just look at it and know the characteristics, but they try it and give us some feedback regarding their experience. We can also have an overall test, when they have to test every characteristic of the product. And we have a partial test when some of the characteristics of the product get higher importance, let's say the price. And if we are now at price, there are some tests that especially require people to answer regarding price. So we can, with experiments, we can also test the price. So let's say I would like to sell a new mobile phone on the market. I'm totally new, I am basically a new brand, and I would like to sell a new mobile phone. But let's say I can show this mobile phone to you, and I'm interested in how much will you be willing to pay for it. I have different test methods how I can get to know how much you would pay. Let's say I would ask you that would you pay 100 forints? Of course, it's a smartphone, 100 forints, that's alright. Would you pay 300,000 forints? And then you might say, for 300,000 I can already buy an iPhone. Would I buy it for 300,000 forints? Well, in this case, I can start from the lowest level. I can also start from the highest level, and then somewhere in the middle, you would say, or there are two prices where you would say that I wouldn't give this much, and from the upper side, there's a price that you would say that I wouldn't give that much for it. So there are different methods how you can try this. You can also use a simple question where you ask like, okay, how much is it worth for you? And you just give me a number. Of course, a realistic number, but I would say, yeah, I would buy it for 100. What about 200, 300, or 5,000, or 100,000? And I said, you cannot only use the opinion of people, but you can also use a price comparison side. Well, you can actually look at how much people would be willing to pay for a certain product or a certain service. International sites, we have Price Runner, where you can check the different prices that people are willing to pay. Okay, what is even more common is the brand test. In case of brands, people are usually affected by what the brand is, and they are willing to evaluate a product based on its brand. Well, in case of blind tests, you remove the brand from the equation, and you probably separate the brand from the fact that you are trying to research. Let's say I'm trying to research different types of Cokes. And in this case, I have Coca-Cola, I have Pepsi, and other types of Cokes. Well, in this case, I remove the brand. I give you 4 or 5 different cups of them, and you have to drink it, and you have to say which one is the best. Well, in this case, the brand will not affect you, but only your tasting will affect you, the results. But on the other hand, if I show you the brands, you might be willing to say that, yeah, my favorite is Coca-Cola. I just tell you an example. I have created the research 2 years ago where I asked students their opinion of different túrórudi types. Túrórudi, the pöttyös, is a traditional Hungarian dish, traditional Hungarian sweet. And I used different brands, and there was a girl who said that pöttyös is her favorite. She loves it, so she will know which one it is. She didn't know. So when we removed the brands from the tasting, then she had no idea which one was pöttyös, even though she said that that was her favorite and she always eats that. So I think the blind tests are amazing. Open tests are also great, but then the brand has an influence. And the last method I would like to tell you is the mystery shopping. Well, in case of mystery shopping, it's also a test and an experiment. You yourself as a researcher is disguised, and you are trying to get a service or a product in a way that they don't know that you are observing them. Usually this is the case in the telecommunications sector here in Hungary, that if you are working for Vodafone or T-Home or T-Systems, then, and if you are dealing with people, with customers, then your customer can actually be somebody who is from the company and evaluating you and checking if you are doing everything in a way that you were supposed to. Well, this is called mystery shopping, when there is somebody who's trying the service, but that somebody is part of our company and is only testing us if we are doing our job in a good way. Well, there is a very good series basically for mystery shopping. I don't know if you've seen The Undercover Boss, where this is an American TV show, and the bosses are usually undercover, and they are starting as a new employee at the basically bottom of the food chain. So they are starting usually as janitors or the lowest level jobs, and they are getting to know their employees in a different way. So this is amazing. This is one way of mystery shopping. Okay, so experiments also have some great advantages based on this. That otherwise you won't be able to ask these in a questionnaire, so there are results that otherwise you wouldn't be able to get. The time effects of the changes could be measured, so you will see how time affects the changes. You can relate them to a specific topic because it only requires a very small amount of money, and these experiments can be repeated. While the disadvantages could be that not many people are experienced enough to be prepared for experiments, and some of them don't know how to conduct it. If we think about experiments, you need a place where you can do it, you need certain equipment with which you can do it. And usually the laboratory setting is too artificial, and it can also influence your respondents and people who take part in the experiment. Okay, so all in all, this is what I wanted to tell you about observation and experiment. And these types of research have previously not been studied so extensively, but nowadays their importance is once again more and more in the forefront of research, because nowadays the media, social media sites, and online marketing and online tools have given us different data and different ways how we can look at this data. Because if we ask this data, we would get different answers, but with the appearance of online firms, the appearance of the online tracking possibilities of your customers, they already have the different companies already have the data that we otherwise would have asked. So that's why nowadays there are not so many questionnaires, because you already know these data based on your Facebook page, based on let's say your Google ads. So you have data, you have lots of data. That's why observation and experiment would be much more important in the future. And I think the emphasis would be on these, not ethnography, looking at the online data, not asking your customers, because they have already given their answers. And most of the customers volunteer their answers by themselves. So they tell you by themselves, they rate you on Facebook, they give you excellent feedback or bad feedback, but still they are willing to give or provide their opinion for free, and you don't have to ask it in the questionnaires. So that's what I think is going to happen in the future. Probably qualitative research, especially observation experiment, will be much more important. Okay guys, so this is what I wanted to tell you. If you have any questions regarding this, just let me know. Be safe, and I hope we will meet very soon, or at least in September we'll be able to meet in person as well.